Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
We are going to look at these verses today in the same way we always do, but I want you to really focus on the verbs that are going to be used in the different verses. My guess is we get through 3 or 4 today. That's hopeful. But I want you to focus on the verbs. The verbs are extremely descriptive in these particular verses, and also, and I think that this class will be very good at this, kind of provide their own midrash in just one word. What's another place in the Torah, probably also Tanakh, but I'm specifically thinking of a place in the Torah where verbs are used in this kind of illustrative way. Can you think of a place?
The Torah uses verbs.
Verbs like this, like one right after the other to explain something happening that's dramatic.
With the description of the ways of redemption that take place.
Okay, great. So that is not the one that I was thinking of. That is one, Stevie.
Stealing the birthright. So just as
Okay.
4 verbs in a row and really a fit.
Great. So it was a little bit of a trick. Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Stevie beat me to it.
Oh, okay. So the birthright is one.
Vayochal, vayesh, the
Great.
3 or 4 verbs in a row, yeah?
Great. So it was a little bit of a trick question because there are a few different places that have a similar theme. One of them is the birthright. The other one is the Akedah. The other one is the beginning of Exodus. That there are these moments where we're reading that people are doing things. Okay, great. Stevie just rattled them off. No one heard him, but lovely. Good job. So the idea of using these verbs, I think also in Megillat Esther is very important to how we understand how to illustrate what's happening in this particular part of the Megillah. So I want us to specifically focus on those words. We're going to obviously focus on the entirety of the verse. That's just my hope for today. Does someone want to read verse 16 for us, starting off with one of those verbs? Okay, you need a microphone if you're going to read.
ותתלחק אסתר המלך אחשוורוש אל בית המלכותו בחודש העשירי חודש טבח שבע למלכותו.
Okay, so it's the. Do you want to translate for us, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can read this. Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebach, in the 7th year of his reign.
Okay. Questions, thoughts? Go ahead.
You're going on a theme that you raised here. So in these Torah significant moments, the individual is not acting. God is acting and making this happen. So she's taken. They took her, but they don't say they took her. She was taken. In the same way, and the themes in Torah that you were suggesting, that in these Torah moments, God is acting and bringing about something.
Okay, Stevie.
Just that the word, the tilakach, often implies marriage.
Great.
So,
Yeah. So to Stevie's point, and this actually, both Barry and Larry, that works, should write books on their own individual midrashim that they're coming up with in this class. So Barry's on the God train, and Larry's on the Larry train, and Stevie just pointed out that v'tilakach, the word lakach, is often used as a physical way of saying that a woman was taken for marriage. There are lots of ways that we could understand why that is the word being used. Of course, there are ways to say she was engaged to him, or she started to get to know him, or they had a relationship. There are lots of words in Hebrew to mean those things. V'tilakach means that she was taken to be his wife. Often, right? Doesn't say that here, but to Stevie's point, that's often what that word implies. There was another, Marshall.
I'm wondering if it also might mean that she was taken forcibly.
Great.
That did she go willingly or not go willingly?
Good.
Knowing what the exact purpose of her going was.
Good. Okay. I mean, not good, but yes, you are correct. So the second side to the coin that Stevie brought to us is that often why it means that she was taken to be a wife, right? Any woman, right? Any person who was taken, it often means to be a wife, is because it was done by force, right? They didn't get to know each other and then get engaged and then plan a wedding, which is no stress whatsoever, and become married, right? She was taken to be his wife, and that was it, right? Remember in the last verse that we just read, or last week read, she won the admiration of all who saw her, which is lovely, but all we know is that she went to the king, right? We actually don't know what happens in between verse 15 and verse 16, such that now she was taken to be with the king, and to Stevie's point, most likely to be his wife, which, spoiler alert, in the next verse we're going to see is in fact why she was taken. So the fact that there's really not much information here as to what happens to then cause her to be taken, other than the fact that she was seen as, she was seen with admiration. I was going to say admirable, but I don't know about that. Any other thoughts on 16? Yeah, Leonard. Oh, sorry, Rick, you'll go next. You're Leonard.
I just wanted to point out here that the month mentioned over here, which I can't find at the moment.
Tevet.
There we are. Okay, so that's the Babylonian month. So these are the months that we're currently using now.
Correct.
But they were all adopted by our forefathers after being exiled to Babylon and not previously.
Great.
So these months are only found in books that are written at the time or after the exile.
Okay, great. You are 100% correct. And in today's day, it's not the 7th month. What month is it? Sorry, it's not the Bishna. Oh, sorry. I was reading the wrong year. Bishnat Sheva Malchuto. Sorry, my bad. So starting with Nisan, if we're starting with Nisan, which we don't actually count as the first month, but it is counted as the first month in biblical texts and in rabbinic texts as well until a certain point. If you start with Nisan, then it is the 10th month. Sorry, I was reading 7, which comes later on with the year. Rick, remember I called on someone? Do you remember who?
Hi. So
Hi.
on the verb lakach, let's remember that Mordechai also used lakach when he took her to be his adopted daughter. So
Right. Good.
we can't read too much into it. And I'd also like to point out that she was taken to Hamelech Achashverosh. It could have said Achashverosh took her, right? Or it could have been written differently, but I just think they're moving the story along. She knows what the story is. It's not like she's kicking and screaming as they're dragging her down the hallway, So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and so the way that you are interpreting it and the way that Stevie is interpreting it, I think are the two ways to interpret this, right? One is that she, not necessarily willingly, but that she goes because she knows that this isn't the next part of the story. And the other version of the story is she goes because she's told she has to go, and there's a purpose behind her going or her being taken. You are correct. The same word is used earlier on, and also just the verse right before, right? Asher lakach lo lavat. He took for her to be his daughter. So yes, it could be that is just a simple word that means that something was done out of necessity or something was done without what's the word I'm looking for? Without her agency. It's not the word.
Coercion, without coercion.
That wasn't the word I was looking for, but that's another way of looking at it for sure. Yeah, well, the point that I'm trying to make without remembering the word is that when she was a child, she didn't become his daughter, right? Because that was something she asked to do. It was something out of necessity that needed to occur. And so too here, maybe that same word is being used, that she was taken out of someone's necessity. It doesn't seem like it was necessarily hers. Rachel, you had your hand up. Do just use that. Yeah, use the mic. Use the mic. Yeah.
The last few verses have been, this is the procedure for the women that were taken to the king in his search for a new queen. And that it's simply her turn.
Right.
That as much as we might want to read more into that.
Right. I think that was Rick's point, which is to your son's point. I think there is precedent to imagine that there's something written behind this. There's also a way in which we could just say it was her turn. We know that from the last verse. It was her turn. She went. He took her because that's what he did with everybody, and so be it. That was the next piece.
I'm wondering if the reference to it's the month of Tevet.
Yeah.
And we know when Purim is. So it's giving us kind of a minimum time frame would be Tevet to Adar of the same year, only like a 4-month time frame, or it could have been more, especially if there's a voice, when he says of all these 180 women, Esther is my choice. So then they have a coronation and like the whole thing.
Right.
Then it could have been more than that 3 or 4 months.
Sure.
More reading information to come. Keep reading.
Okay.
All right. First of all, just want to observe that she was taken not only to Achashverosh, but El Beit Malchuto, which is once again emphasizing the fact that we've got these different physical locations, which last week I think I argued that the harem was a different place from where Esther eventually would go. Secondly, the fact that it has to tell us that the 10th month is Tevet suggests to me that the author understood that not all the readers of this story, and I would even say not even all Jews, would understand the new nomenclature for the months. And I'm curious, though it's a digression, we don't talk about it now, if there's certainly a scholarship about when those names of months changed and when they became accepted. The third thing that nobody's commented on and strikes me as being really astounding to me is if I go back and I read verse 1 in chapter 1. So I'm told, I'm going to read Alter's translation just for ease. And it happened in the days of Achashverosh. Achashverosh was king from Midian to Cush, 127 provinces. In those days, this is verse 2. In those days when Achashverosh is seated on his royal throne, which is in Shushan, the capital, in the 3rd year of his reign. I don't remember that we talked about the timing, but in the 3rd year we have the banquet. He kicks out Vashti. And now we're told it's the 7th year of his reign. 4 years have gone by. I can't remember if we were told before that that so much time had actually passed.
Yeah.
My final comment is I can't wait till we get to the Rashi.
Okay, so the timing, I think this is why I had 7 in my head when I made the mistake comment about the month. The timing is really interesting. And actually, we haven't talked to the Megillah hasn't talked about it explicitly, but this class has talked about it quite a bit in terms of how much time it would have taken to get through all of these different women, and also to just have specific time with each one of them. I think it might have been Stevie, but someone a few weeks ago read a commentary that said that it wasn't every day, that it was like every other day or certain days of the week or whatever. Maybe it was Norm, it was someone on this side of the room. And it's an interesting way for us to remember that timing, unlike the Torah, that timing might be able to be calculated here by those different instances. I haven't done the math, but if someone wants to do the math of how many women we assume were present, we don't actually know. And then how many, according to that midrash that I think Norm read to us, right? How many days is that? And we might get to 4 years in between one thing and the next. I don't know because I didn't do that math, but I'm glad that Larry brought that up because it is astonishing that just in the second chapter of this Megillah, we've already jumped 6 years, right? And we don't have any idea. 4 years, excuse me. Wow, I'm really good at math today. 4 years, right? This is why I haven't done the math. 4 years, which is a very long time to go from the introduction of something to not even the middle of the Megillah, right? We're still very much at the beginning. Marshall.
Without reading Rashi's commentary,
Yeah.
I don't know why we had even the reference to Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that might mean that this was her 10th month in this group of women. It took her 12 months, apparently, to get all beautiful.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's merely saying, okay, she's been there 10 months already. Now she became so beautiful. Now she can be brought to the king.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that plays into the timing piece again, right? That it might have taken each woman a very long time to actually be prepared to then approach the king. That's a very interesting point. Rashi, as you can see, has a different take on that, but it's a really interesting idea. Yeah, Barry? It's right there.
Going back to the being taken on herself, how she got into this whole story. I'm recalling the story of Moshe and the basket. He had nothing to do with this, but his mom put him in the basket, or his sister put him in the basket. He was found and he was taken, and he transitioned into the royal palace. In a similar way, she was taken. Mordecai prepared her. She was taken. There's a parallel I'm seeing here in the two storylines.
Nice. Very nice. Leonard, did you have?
So actually, there are commentators who talk about timing here.
Oh, great. Go for it.
Some of them talk about, it takes time to gather these people from all over the place.
Right.
And then we know about the year of preparation and so on. But I'll just read you what Steinsaltz has to say. This was 4 years after Achashverosh had dismissed Vashti. During this period, the young women had been gathered and had undergone meticulous preparation before presentation to the king.
Okay, so Steinsaltz actually isn't saying anything that we can't infer from the Megillah. Like if anybody, unlike me this morning, I guess, can do basic math, right? We can understand that those 4 years probably did include what's going on here. It's lovely that he says it out loud. I'm not sure that like adds to any particular I guess chiddush, right? In terms of what might have been happening, but his response makes sense given the verses that happen in between one period of time and the other period of time. Yeah, Diane.
So I had a sudden thought as we're reading this, and that is that there must be other stories in folklore of kings choosing a new queen, and it turns out that there are whole categories of kings choosing a queen. So beauty is one, but there's also character, and the Princess and the Pea is one. And it's I'm trying to put this story in the context of other kings choosing their new queen. Cinderella.
I got that one right though. Just to be miduyak, it's not 4 years. It's at most 3.5, but probably much less because there was 180 days banquet, and then there was another banquet, and then there was the whole process of
getting ready,
sending out the notices and all that.
Yeah. You're always allowed to be meduyak when it comes to math, because as you can see, I'm very good at it. So, Rick, go ahead.
To Diane's point, I was going to throw in Henry VIII. I've seen on TV, they sent the portrait of the woman that he was looking at, the princess from Europe. So he didn't, Achashverosh's way of doing it is much better. At least he could see the person, but Henry VIII didn't even get to see her in person. So
could see the person. The
audition of the most intimate kind.
Right. I just off of Rick's point, if any of you haven't seen Six, the musical, which I actually just recently saw, it's not my favorite musical in the world, but it has great music, and and the storyline is all these different wives, right, that he had, and one of them talks, it's, a modern take, obviously, but to Rick's point, she talks about how he didn't like her profile picture, right? So it's the same kind of idea. But yeah, I think this is not a foreign story to us, right? Of course, there were always kings that were choosing queens. They weren't going, out to a cafe and going on dates. That wasn't the way that kings were doing it. So of course, this is something that was done. I think the way in which it is elaborated upon and the way in which we understand the detail of what all these women went through is, at least to me, particular to the different stories, even to the Cinderella story that we know. But still, there was a process, and that process takes time. So let's read the Rashi, and then we'll go to the next verse. I'm just going to read it very quickly, and then we'll because it's more funny than it is really anything. Rashi was very concerned about why Bechodesh HaAsiri et Sinah Haguf ne min haguf. This was a cold season, which it still is. Tevet is a cold month when one body enjoys from another body. Here, the English inserts also the warmth of another body. This is kind of like a wink, commentary. Zimena kadosh baruch hu oto et Sinah kedei lehachbava alav. So God designated this to be a cold season in order to endear her to him. Elon, I'll let you comment first.
I know you think I'm going to comment on the warm body part, but actually what intrigues me about this commentary is God designated.
Yes.
So one of the most interesting things about the Megillah to me is that God is not mentioned. And in fact, it's all about how human beings have accountability for their own behavior, and how the heroes of the story are human beings without divine intervention, right? And it's almost as if Rashi can't stomach that, meaning that he just can't stomach that human beings did this on their own, and he has to insert a divine hand to make himself feel better. So I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this has been Barry's whole thing since we started this Megillah, is that God is present in all of these different moments. And I think Rashi is taking to a very similar trope, no pun intended, that there's an idea here that if certain things were the case, like which month she was going to the king, then according to Rashi, and I would assume according to Barry, that of course it had to be that it was this month, because God needed it to be a month that she actually would decide to go, because then she could get warmth in a time that was cold. But I agree with you, Elon, and this is why when we read commentaries, it's really important for us to remember that they're commentaries because the importance of the Megillah, similar to the importance of the Haggadah, is for us to recognize who or what is missing in order to lift up that which is present. And so in the Megillah, in Megillat Esther, that which is missing is God. If we want to imagine God in moments, of course we can, but it's all about the people. And so Rashi bringing this in, I think you're right. It's hard for him as a Torah commentator, capital T, right? It's hard for him to imagine that none of this had kind of divine magic or power or will associated within it, even though it's never mentioned that God was physically present. Okay, everybody's hand is up in the room. Elon, were you going to comment on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Barry, Stevie, Diane, Larry. Is there a microphone that we can hand Barry? Leonard, you can hand that microphone to Barry. Great. Thank you.
So let me get in on the side of Rashi and giving some support here. I don't think he's doing this on his own. The Megillah, the Talmud, in order to get this whole book into the canon, the rabbis had to make up how God is involved in this. So it became a canon, and it brought into, it's not just a novel, a comic book novel. It's brought into the canon because God's involved. That's where he's getting this from. He's not making it up.
Exactly. So I think that's exactly what I said, which is that I think Rashi, as a Torah commentator, needs to bring God in because it's uncomfortable for him to read a text where God is not present. Yeah, Stevie.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhat the same thing, that Rashi is far from the first to do this.
Right.
And the Talmud is also far from the first to do this. You can go all the way back to the Septuagint, where the book of Esther has numerous editions that are more theologic, I guess. And they're clearly, from a critical perspective, secondary editions.
Mm-hmm.
But like it goes as far back as there's evidence for this text existing. There's, versions of it that have, God added to it.
Right. Exactly.
So, I just want to point out the Northern Hemisphere bias of
good.
Judaism
Yes.
in general,
Yeah.
and Rashi's comment.
Mm-hmm.
Having lived in the Southern Hemisphere for such a long time, you start to realize that the religion isn't as universal as you thought it was.
Yeah.
Right. And for Rashi to say it's the cold season, well, in France,
Right.
it's a cold season in Persia. Not so much.
Right. It's such an interesting point, right? Because again, the commentator tells us exactly where he, or in our day, she is coming from, right? That he's speaking from France as a guy who's lived through Tevet and it's been cold. But if he's actually referring to what was happening where they are during their time, we have no idea what the weather was like. And definitely based off of where they are in the world, right? It probably actually wasn't cold. And so that's a very interesting point. Larry. What do you mean? The month is cold? No. I think, but the point that Diane is making is that given where Rashi is in accordance to where this story supposedly took place, we are thinking it's different climates. They're very different places, right? So we're not talking about like Australia versus North America, right, in terms of being completely the opposite, but just in terms of what the climate might have been, the point is well taken that he's talking about his experience during that month, not necessarily theirs.
So I was immediately taken with another image, which is Avishag, a Shunammite, who was the virgin who was brought to David to warn him. And even though Rashi doesn't say it, what do we know about Avishag? he never knew her. She remained a virgin,
Mm-hmm.
at least until his son, I think, married her.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't matter. That's not my point. I'm just wondering if maybe Rashi isn't giving us a hint that even though Esther was brought in to warm the king, she never really had relations with him. Don't worry.
Oh, interesting.
She remained pure.
That's a very interesting connection.
Larry, are you a betting man?
Yeah, Leonard.
So we've been talking here about the weather in Mozambique and in Australia and in France and in Persia. But in Judaism, it seems like the only weather that matters is the weather in Israel. So that's why we have Geshem and Tal and stuff.
True.
It's all based on what's happening in Israel, regardless of what the weather is locally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, it's possible that Rashi's not even talking about France, but actually just talking about what would be happening in Israel. Okay. All right. Can we go on to the next verse? Anybody else have anything? Yes, Alan. Oh, you want to read the next verse? Yeah. Shkoyach. Yes, Larry.
Not to dwell, I asked ChatGPT a question about the time, the time elapsed, and it taught me something very interesting, which is that if you relate this to history, and if you think that Achashverosh was Xerxes, the time gap is exactly the gap when he was spent several years focused on the Greek campaign, that he was battling the Greeks, including a couple of battles that I won't mention here that we actually know. It doesn't suggest that the rabbis actually thought that was what was going on. But if you look at the beginning of the chapter 2, it says, after all these things. So very often in the Bible, when we have after all these things, it's other things that are not part of the story. So maybe that gives some credence to the fact that this book is to some extent historical fiction, and the history part is that's why there was this gap.
Right.
Sensino mentions them.
Yes, there you go. They actually mentioned so much balance.
Okay, Alan, on to you.
ויאהב המלך את אסתר מכל הנשים, ותיסחן לחסד לפניו מכל הבתולות, וישם כתר מלכות בראשה, וימליכה תחת Vashti.
Okay.
All right.
In the next 26 minutes, we might get through this verse. Okay. Go ahead.
I think we can. That the king loved Esther more than any other of the women that were there, and she found favor in his eyes more than all of the other Bitulot, all of the other virgins, and he put the Keter Malchut, they call it diadem, the royal diadem with the crown on her head, and made her the queen instead of Vashti.
Okay. First of all, the English is very simple and makes a lot of sense. But if we look at some of the verbs here, and Alan did a great job of translating it. He didn't do anything wrong. But if we look at some of the verbs here, we can recognize that there's a lot more, I would say, under the surface than is really present in the English translation. First of all, what does tachat Vashti mean? Okay, so everyone's saying what I expected everyone to say, which is tachat can mean under. It also can mean in replacement of or in place of. Instead is a fine word, obviously, but it doesn't mean as strong of a word as what tachat actually means. This goes back to the fact that we actually don't really know what happened to Vashti. We just know that she's no longer in the kingdom. We don't know if she's been around, but just not the queen. We don't know if she died. We don't know or she was killed, sorry. We don't know any of those things for a fact. Our commentators in this class have lots of thoughts on that. but we don't actually know for a fact. This word, I think, gives us a bit of a window into that mystery a little bit. I'm going backwards, but vayasem keter malchut berosha vayamlicheha. That little phrase within this verse here, within this sentence, is really, really interesting. And he put the crown of the kingdom on her head, and he made for her his queen. But what is within the word yamlicheha? Yeah, Malka or Melech, right? That he made for her the female version of being the king, which we call a queen. But it's interesting, right, that the conjugation of the word vayamlicheha is really focusing more on the fact that he is assuming her into that position, right, as opposed to her, becoming that position herself, which is not really a thing in royalty. And then one more, and then I'm happy to take people's thoughts in the room and on Zoom. Rick actually had his hand up first. We'll go to Rick. The first word, vaye'ehav, right? And does this bring up anything for anybody? Marshall. Yeah. So when we talk about Yosef, right, it's a word that means favored or loved more or selected out from the rest of the brothers. Where else do we see this word used? Where's the first time we see this used? Jacob loved Rebecca. Isaac loved Rebecca, sorry. Isaac loved Rebecca. That's the first place in the Torah that we hear the word love, right? And in that case, it comes with who's Rebecca to Isaac, other than just his wife? What does she do for him? Rachel? Good. She comforts him after the death of her mother. And I don't have Chumash in front of me right now, but if we look at that verse, there is, tachad is not the word used, but there's very similar language of like she replaces Sarah. Right, so there's something very symbolic here about the different ways in which Esther is being spoken about in terms of her rise to power, so to speak, or her being brought into the kingdom. Okay, I'm done. Rick.
I was going to continue with the verbs that you wanted us to focus on. So yeah, the first verb there, it's not passive, like she was loved by the king. Yeah. It's active. I believe the form. It's more intense. It's not even a simple he ohaved her, right? It's vaye'ehav hamelech. Is it he feel? Anyway, it doesn't look passive. It looks very intense. So right.
Yeah,
the king actually loved her. Is my point.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. Yeah, Barry. Oh, here.
So going back to 2:16, the word patalachat. So she was taken, and here she's queened, and she's not doing this on her own. She doesn't do these things, which lays the groundwork later. How she maintains her silence. He never really knows who she is. Mm-hmm. She doesn't speak. She doesn't do. Everything is done to her. And only later we're going to find that what she does, what she says.
Right. So the word vetilakach, right? And then the fact that she's vayamlichehad, right? So all of these things are passive to her. But to Rick's point, the vaye'ehav doesn't actually, it might be passive to her, but it doesn't seem to be a passive verb. It does seem to be something that is happening, not necessarily to her, by the way, but he loved her. It doesn't say that she loved him back, but he loved her. Yeah, Rebecca.
I think it's interesting saying that he loved Esther more than all the virgins.
Yeah.
Instead of using the word for concubines, pelagshim.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pelagshim. as if maybe she also is still in this category of the virgins that are trying out, because once they try out, they're going to move to this second house in the concubine. So maybe it's to Larry's potential theory about maybe Esther still is among the virgins.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, that there are many different words being used here for women, right? There's nashim, there's pilagshim, there's betulot, there's nashim, right? And they all mean something different based on their part in the process, right? Their moment in the journey that they're having towards the king. Rick, and then Diane.
I have found Isaac.
Oh, great, thank you.
I used it at Jesse's the night before the wedding, because he was marrying Rebecca, is my daughter-in-law. Anyway, The word is vayehaveha. It's 6 syllables all condensed into the one word. Very intense. He loved her, and it's vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo.
Acharei, nice, thank you.
Yeah, but I just love that vayehaveha. So here we have vayehav. So it's the same form.
Yeah, great. Diane.
So Benji Siegel has some really interesting things to say about queen, about the fact that Esther is the queen or a queen.
Yeah.
So according to Herodotus, the single queen of Persia had to come from one of 7 royal families. Queen is not used for a Jewish wife of a king elsewhere in the Bible, with the exception of the one instance here. And
queen meaning the title?
Right. So, and it's Esther the queen, and Vashti the queen, and Mordecai the Jew, and Haman the Agagite. So it's like a title. And he says, I suggested the position of both Vashti and Esther was that of a favorite among the queens, but not the queen. The royal standard bearer, possibly chosen for political reasons and or to bear the heir to the throne. The position of favorite would be one of great importance as long as the woman held it. Seeing Esther as one of the queens would befit the submissive nature of this role. She could not come unless called. And the mention of another gathering of virgins, which I guess we haven't gotten to yet, placing the crown on Esther's head is not a sign of exclusiveness, but of being one of the king's possessions. For example, the crown that's placed on the horse's head.
Wow. I think when he's talking about the gathering of the virgins, it's this lefanav mikol habetulot, which goes back to Rebecca's point of, weren't we just talking about Peleg Shem? So I think it's like this new set of, but that's the whole thing was very interesting. Yeah, Larry.
Very briefly, I still think that there's a contrast in different interpretations.
Okay.
So one interpretation that I know Elon's going to join me in is Esther pleased the king in ways you can all imagine.
Yeah.
Right? He betted her and he said, wow,
yeah,
I like this. And the other interpretation that we get from all the commentators, but also in this book, which is really interesting, not only the pictures, but the translation. And the king loved Esther more than all the other women. And the picture is just Esther. She just looks beautiful. And she pleased him.
She looks like a Disney princess, to be fair.
A Disney princess. Yeah. She pleased him. It's not that pleased him in the sense of she gave him that he found it pleasurable. She did things to please him. And here she's wiping off his beard.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing sexual there, a little sensual maybe. And carried grace, which is kind of a translation there of chen there, I guess.
Yeah, so if it was just to pause for 1 second, v'tisachen, I was going to mention this before, so I'm glad you reminded me. V'tisachen means, and she lifted up grace, not just that she found grace, which was part of that translation from Sfaria. Yeah, go ahead.
Here she's pouring wine into his goblet, and kindness within her. She was so there's the chesed that she was kind. More so than all the other virgins. In the picture there is other virgins who look to be not only less pretty, but they're not
as put together.
So what I'm saying here is, all I'm saying is there's the Elon Larry side of what the male psychology is and what the king really wants out of her, versus all the other commentaries are that she was just such a wonderful person.
Right.
He couldn't help but love her.
Right. And one thing that I'll say about this, this piece here that I think that this illustration is doing a very interesting job of, and again, the illustration is its own commentary, of course, is that the commentary here is trying to get us to understand Esther's character and therefore why he might love her, right? Which is not how we read it initially, especially because of the verse prior, which is that she was taken and, you know, she was with the king. But that it seems to be that what we're supposed to get from this is that Esther was a person who could also change for the king that which he experienced from her, maybe changing himself, maybe allowing him to see some of that kindness, some of that grace that she's bringing, and you know, and allowing us to see kind of a softness in the king. Again, it's not necessarily what the verse implies in the words that are being used, but this piece here that I had forgotten to mention before, the v'tisachem v'chesed lefanav, is a very interesting way of saying that which the English says, and she won his grace and favor. It's actually not what it says at all. It's very much so that she brings before him this lifting up of these qualities of grace and kindness. And so the illustration shows that, right? Let me show this guy who hasn't been so great to me or anybody else what it means to be a good person. And maybe that allows him to be a little bit better. All commentary, but really a beautiful way of reading it. Yeah, Rachel.
I'm just trying to imagine if I were writing a midrash. She's with him between being brought into his palace or his chamber for maximum of 12 hours. And he's getting visits like this from 180 women.
Right.
You know, if not one after the other, then at least 2 or 3 a week. What could she have done during that time period to demonstrate her grace, her ability to lift up those with her,
right,
that he would turn around and say, out of the 114 women I've auditioned over the last year and a half, I want this one.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, there is precedent, and I'm not someone who has studied this before, but I think we all know that there is precedent for someone for whom they feel captive or feel like they are in a situation that they might not have control over, of trying to change behavior. And the best way to change behavior is to exude it yourself, and then to see if the person in front of you can also change it, right? So we heard this in stories from October 7th, right? The hostages treated their captors a certain way to try to see if they would then in return treat them a certain way. Doesn't mean that their lives were saved. It doesn't mean that they were good people, but it does mean that behavior was changed because of what they were doing. And so what Esther is doing here by lifting up grace and kindness, to your point, Rachel, maybe that's what allowed him to see, okay, this is a special person, because she's not just doing what I asked her to do, but rather she's showing me behavior that can be different and a way of moving forward. Leonard.
There's nothing here that says that he chose her immediately, right? He said, you know, he liked her more than all the virgins, right? So he liked her more than all the people that he had seen before and after. And then he goes, I remember that, Esther. Let's bring her back. That she wins.
That's a good point. Yep. Okay, let's do. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, that's okay. I mean, maybe it's okay. I don't know what you're about to do.
I'm surprised that Marshall isn't jumping in here.
You can read that verse. It's a wonderful comment that
Alter is on the Elon Larry side, that's for sure. But he's gone further than anything I imagined. And the king loved Esther more than all the other women. The reason for this love is not spelled out. Perhaps it was just her winning ways, as indicated at the end of verse 15. But if sexual performance is the crucial test, how would one inexperienced virgin distinguish herself from the other? We are left wondering about this, but the art double meaning of one detail at the beginning of chapter 5 raises the suspicion that this passive and not very competent king may have a problem with virility. If that is the case, the beautiful and understanding Esther might possibly be the one virgin who helps him overcome his difficulties. And I'll just simply add, you were talking about the lifting up.
Yeah.
She was Viagra.
All right, folks. Well, that's Alter. That's Alter, not Larry. He wants everybody to know. Yeah, Rebecca, I don't have anything to say.
I was just going to say, and maybe, although initially she was inexperienced, she's not so inexperienced now because she's gone multiple times to see him and all that. So, right?
Yes.
I'm reminded of.
Are you also going to comment on this?
Sort of.
Okay, great.
I'm trying to put a PG version on.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I don't know if you saw The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
But in short, most of the women are sterile, so they have some women who are not sterile who serve as handmaids, and they serve as surrogates.
Just like our matriarchs.
Exactly. That's what they got it from. And so, or that's how they justified it.
Yeah.
And so there's one scene where the man is not satisfied with this purely sexual relationship, so he invites her to his room and they play Scrabble, to form this intellectual bond. So that's how I imagine that it's not just sexual, that there's also sort of an intellectual bond. And if I was doing a graphic novel, I would show them sitting down playing checkers and he's like physically queening her.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. Okay, well, there's a lot of texts coming out of this class. I think we have 2 midrash and a graphic novel. So I'll be the publisher. Who read this verse? Was that Alan? Okay, can you read the Rashi for us, please?
Sure. Mikol hanashim habeulot, sha'af nashim habeulot kabetz.
Kibetz, yeah.
Kibetz.
So what does the word Baal, but Beulot come from? I just gave it away.
Well, Baal is
master.
Generally a master.
Yeah.
I was going to say a married man is generally Baal Habayit.
So what is Rashi doing here? How is he responding to this idea of Mikol Hanashim?
Well, he's describing it's not just the Betulot, the virgins, but it's anyone who is married was also going to be included in this great. And it's surprising to me because it seems like that the king would now be taking on married men in this, or is he defining married men once they have sex with him, they're deemed to be married to him? I don't completely get this.
So without getting into the laws of Kiddushin here for just a second, remember that men were allowed to have multiple wives. But women could not have multiple husbands, right? So it is interesting in terms of thinking about what the king was doing here. Obviously, there's no sense that that Jewish law was being practiced, but it's showing us here that it definitely wasn't, right? Because you would never have women who were married in a situation in which a king was calling them forward. That's a little bit of a halachic aside. But also this goes back to Rebecca's question of these different categories of women. So nashim, what Rashi is translating them as, is not just women, but married women, because the other category in this verse are betulot, which, again, according to the laws of Kiddushin, and when you think about who the different categories of women are when putting together a ketubah, betulta is an unmarried woman. Now, in Hebrew, Betulta is Aramaic, but in Hebrew, Betula means virgin. But in accordance to halacha, in accordance to what it means in the practical law, it just means that you've never been married before because, again, the snowball effect of halacha here, if you've never been married, you are, we assume you are a virgin, right? So when Rashi's responding here, he's just giving us a definition to what nashim is so that we understand that there are these different categories of women that are being brought before him. And they're not just young women and they're not just virgins who have never been married before. They are also women who have been married. Diane. And then Stevie.
So if the test is a test of sexual whatever in the bedroom,
right,
then you have to wonder, I think it was feudal society that had the king's right of the first night, whether there's an implication there, if Rashi is making that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Stevie.
Rashi definitely lived in a feudal society, but Rashi, I think, is also raising the issue in the pasuk that there's two different clauses have two different terms. So
you mean the Mikol HaNashim and Mikol HaBetulot?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. He loved more than the other women, but she was, and Chen v'Chesed could mean anything from kind to loyal, but whatever it was, compared to all the virgins. So I don't know what other ways to draw out like that distinction was, was the king, sleeping with married women but not considering them for the queenhood,
right.
Maybe, but Rashi certainly drawing attention to this issue of pasuk and then just sort of giving the most vulgar answer possible. But
it could also mean that the king had other wives. Right. So I think when we read this, when we see the married ones, it doesn't necessarily mean married women from the provinces. It could also mean he loved Esther from all of the other women he was married to. Right. So I think that there's a way for us in terms of breaking this down that he loved her from all of the other women he had already married. Right. And she lifted up for him from all the other virgins, right, for whom they were, someone used the word auditioning. I like that. Auditioning in front of him, right. She was the one who lifted up, whether sexually or not, this loyalty and this grace for him. And then because of these things, he made her his queen. So I'm not saying that I'm 100% correct, but I just wanted to point out that to which I said before about the halacha of he can have many different women as his wives, right? He's not implicated by that. I'm so glad. Okay, so we'll move on to verse 18 next week, and we'll get another great banquet. Thanks for learning today, everybody.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.